My name is Jeff Reiland, the host of the Parenting Tips podcast for parents of young and school-aged children. This episode is about parenting with a history of trauma. I was talking with a colleague about this parenting podcast series a few months ago, and my colleague, who treats adult patients, asked if I might consider creating an episode that helps parents who have experienced trauma in their lives and are now also trying to parent. It didn't take long to find both evidence that this is a thing and also guidance when looking into the scientific literature. I'm grateful to my colleague for suggesting this topic, and also grateful to the many parents who have been brave and determined enough to face their own traumatic experiences and learn to be more effective parents in the process. So what kind of trauma are we talking about? When we refer to trauma in this podcast, it is broader than the kind of trauma that might be seen in an emergency room after a car accident. To be certain, car accidents and other kinds of physical injuries can cause serious and lasting physical and mental health problems. The kinds of trauma that we are mostly talking about are invisible. In an earlier episode, I shared statistics that, based on data from Adverse Childhood Experiences study, about 7 out of every 10 families have had at least one adverse experience. About 2/3 of people have experienced at least one adverse experience or traumatic event, and 1 in 8 people have experienced 4 or more adverse experiences. The original 10 ACEs, emotional, physical, sexual abuse, emotional, physical neglect, witnessing intimate partner violence of mom, parental alcoholism or addiction, parental divorce or abandonment, severe parental mental illness, or parental incarceration are only the tip of the iceberg. Being in a natural disaster like an earthquake, forest fire, or hurricane, a frightening car accident, or house fire, or other kinds of accidents, being the victim of sexual assault or other crimes, being bullied, witnessing gun violence, and more can also be sources of experiences that become traumatizing. On the face of it, this seems like a lot of adversity. The word trauma carries some risk if it's overused. While it may be stressful to lose a regional or state championship game, it is not traumatic. While a relationship breakup or a job loss may be stressful, in most cases, it's not traumatic. What makes an event or circumstance traumatic is a bit subjective. When we talk about trauma here, we're referring to psychological trauma. In most cases, it is not the event that defines the trauma. Trauma is determined by the person's response to it. The person experiences emotional distress in response to this traumatic event, whether it be a natural disaster, accident, crime, or adverse childhood experience. Trauma occurs when a person's capacity to manage this stress is overwhelmed. Whether this traumatic event is a one-time experience or it happens repeatedly over time, the traumatized person's sense of safety with the world around them is now questioned. And because of the traumatic experience, the person may struggle with trusting that bad things aren't going to happen again. A vigilance can develop that can get in the way of life, of living life, and sometimes of being a parent. If you can identify with some of this, having lived through some of the difficulty and challenging times, you may find those experiences and the memories you carry about those experiences can shape how you view the world and how you parent your children. There are some common triggers that you may want to think about and decide if they may describe some of your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. If they do, it might be worth looking further into whether or not this is related to your past life experiences. Have you ever dreaded sounding like your own parents? Maybe you thought, I will never parent like they did, or when I become a parent, I will never treat my kids this way, or say that to my kids. And then you find yourself saying or doing some of the same things your parents said or did, those same things you swore you would never do. Now, I'm not trying to bash parents of past generations. We now know more than previous generations of parents. Some of us are fortunate to carry some great parenting experiences and know-how into our lives. Some of us may have a better list of what not to do, but fear repeating those same mistakes. Do you ever just shut down when you are overwhelmed with difficult emotions? This may not be evidence that you have experienced trauma, but many people can identify that when they did experience trauma, they just shut down. The fight, flight, or freeze response is one way that our brains respond to frightening things. And while it can be adaptive in the moment, when the bad thing is happening, it can be more difficult when it happens while you're parenting. In past episodes, I've talked about helicopter or lawnmower parents who try to make sure that no bad thing or outcome befalls their child. This is called being overly protective. This can lead to micromanaging and trying to control for every possible outcome. On the one hand, I applaud parents giving attention to detail to keep kids safe. On the other hand, it can lead to highly anxious children and many conflicts with parents who want things to be just right. It is good to want to keep your kids safe, and it is also wise to recognize that kids learn best from trial and error, from some of their own failings and mistakes. We want our kids to make mistakes in order to learn. We don't want them to make big mistakes. Being overly protective can be exhausting and unrewarding, and it can lead to conflicts with children and spouses. Do you as a parent have difficulty trusting the other adults who are in your child's lives to care for your children? Much of our success as a society is based on expectations and trust that others will do the right thing. When it comes to our children, this is even more true. Teachers, daycare providers, and medical and mental health professionals have criminal background checks to ensure that they are safe for children to be around. Yet, if you are having difficulty trusting the intentions, judgment, and actions of others who care for your children, it can lead to conflict and further isolation for both you and your child. Many parents are acutely aware of the mistakes they make. We all wish we could have a redo button or a do-over feature when it comes to something we said or did as a parent. This is normal. But if you're feeling guilt-ridden about your mistakes, or fear of making a mistake paralyzes you from parenting, where you sometimes have to be firm and make hard decisions that make you unpopular, it may be time to take a closer look as to why. Related to this last point is the fear of saying no because of the backlash from your child being mad at you. I want to assure you that being a good parent does not mean being a popular parent. It is normal and okay that you sometimes have to make decisions that won't earn you high praise from your disappointed child. Having 2 sleepovers 2 nights in a row may not work for you or the rest of the family. Going out and buying the newest gadget may not be in the budget. Not being able to watch a favorite show before chores and homework are done may earn you some glares or the silent treatment for a while. Parents are often in the position of seeing the big picture in terms of costs to things children want or things they want to do. It is okay to set boundaries. Being firm, calm, clear, and nurturing are all goals that can be achieved at the same time in good parenting. Sometimes we carry negative messages in our thoughts about ourselves into our parenting experiences. Do you ever find yourself ripping on yourself in ways that sound really negative? Does it ever sound like an adult from your childhood and how they used to sound? It is not uncommon for adults having struggled with tough early life experiences to sometimes fall into thinking that they are failures or will never amount to much, even though those thoughts aren't accurate at all. Sometimes parents will feel sad about the quality of their relationship with their child. They may want it to be closer, but they're really unsure about how to achieve this. There may be many factors that are involved in this, including the parent's and child's temperament. It is worth exploring what expectations you have of your child as a parent. It's not uncommon for parents to want to be friends with their child, but they have to wait until their children are adults. Friends can't discipline friends. There is a necessary power imbalance between parents and children. The job of parenting can sometimes mean being the proverbial bad guy by saying no. We all get angry sometimes. Anger is a normal response to things not going the way we wanted. Managing anger is also important to master in order to model for children how to manage anger. If parental anger is something that becomes dreaded because it is scary for kids, it also is reinforced by the fact that when kids are scared, they tend to behave better. This is not a good way to parent. In the long run, kids who are intimidated by parents or who are afraid to anger their parents want to spend as little time with them as possible as they get older. We have just covered some of the things that may be the result of a parent having their own trauma and how this may show up in the job as a parent. There may be more things that are happening that could also get in the way. Parents may have unexpected or unsettling memories of their own childhood experiences, maybe those that have been buried or that the parent thought were resolved long ago and now they resurface. This can result in a shift of energy and effort, trying to be present for your child while also trying to battle with these unsettling memories. According to Turn the Tide, a parent resource in the wake of past trauma created by the Foundation Trust and the Complex Trauma Training Consortium, there are a number of circumstances and times when a parent's own trauma is triggered, including certain child behaviors. For example, my child reaches the age that specific trauma experiences happen for the parent, or my child reaches a specific age or stage of development, such as puberty, or my child reminds me of myself, or my child reminds me of a family member or my abuser, or persistent patterns in family or environment that may maintain a state of stress. Here are some common responses we may have in parenting situations. Anxiety when separating from my child due to fear from my own separation from caregivers when I was young. Questioning or challenging others who play a caretaking role for my child due to caretakers harming me. Feeling disconnected from my child's emotional expression because no one helped me to process emotions. Struggling to play with my child because I didn't have playful adults in my life and I'm not sure how. Feeling constantly on alert and fearful that my child will be victimized by others. Experiencing jealousy or resentment, my child is receiving care and opportunities I wasn't given. Becoming overwhelmed by the emotional needs of my child and wishing my own needs could be met first. Making negative comments towards my child when they're aggressive and remind me of my abuser. Feeling the need to use physical discipline, hoping to make my child tougher so they can survive, or alternately, feeling the need to be overly permissive so my child will experience the freedom I never felt. And finally, experiencing anger or resentment toward my child for being more connected with another caretaker or for lacking gratitude for the care I'm providing. If some of this is happening for you and you think it's getting in the way of how you parent your child or your children, if it's getting in the way of your relationship with your children, there are some things you can do about it starting today. The first step is self-care. If you are listening to this podcast and this seems familiar to you, then you are already tuning into how past trauma may be affecting you and your relationship with your child. It's important to recognize the triggers, not so much as to avoid them, but to reduce their effects on you. That was then, this is now. Then is not the same as now. The past is not the present. You are in a different place now. You are in a safer place now. You have strengths and power you did not have then. It is okay to mourn the loss of your own childhood. Too many kids have grown up quickly, too quickly. It's not fair. We also cannot go back and redo the past. We have to move forward for the sake of our children and our relationship with our children. I'm so humbled and in awe of the many parents I have known over the years who are able to give their own children the kind of childhood they did not themselves have. It is the most beautiful gift. Maintain self-care. If you are caught in the cyclical trap of giving until exhausted and there's nothing left to give, it's important to find ways to daily take care of yourself. Adequate sleep, nutrition, exercise, time in nature, time with others and social connection, prayer, reflection, music, whatever you find helps that's healthy, make this part of your daily routine. This can help you stay calm and focused on the present and on your children. Take a look at your own social support network. Who are the adults in your network you can turn to? It may be a combination of friends, family, and professionals you've come to trust. It's okay to recognize you can't raise kids alone. It takes a village. Let the village be part of your child's life. Let the village be part of your life. Learn all you can about child development and what to expect as children transition from one stage to the next. There will always be a few surprises, but it helps to have some idea of what comes next and to celebrate when it arrives. Be present in the moment with your children. This is harder to do than it may sound. Turn off the technology. Social media and other screens do not help us stay focused on the present. They take us away and distract us from one another. Tune into your child's experiences and emotions. Describe to your child what you see them doing and describe the emotions they are showing. For example, if your child is coloring, you might say, "Sarah, you look so happy coloring that pumpkin. I can tell you're working really hard on it because your eyes are really concentrating on the picture and your tongue sticks out of the side of your mouth when you're really concentrating. I really like watching you work on your coloring project." In describing what you see with your child, you're conveying an important message that you really are paying attention to them, that they matter to you. There is great power in physical touch. I cannot say enough about the importance of snuggling, sitting side by side, reading, hugs, and hand-holding. When children seek this, and it is discouraged from parents, it can be confusing. If it is a result of the parent being triggered by their own trauma, young children have no way of understanding this and may perceive the physical distancing as rejection. This can produce negative outcomes for kids. Find ways that you can comfortably cuddle or have other forms of physical contact with your child. If it is through high fives and fist bumps, that's a great start. If you have a co-parent, a partner in the parenting process, it would be helpful to bring them into the picture of what you are struggling with. This allows you to have an additional source of support in difficult times. Your partner can become educated on what your triggers are if you are open, and they can step in with the child or children when you're struggling. It gives you a safe space to talk about your trauma, which helps the healing process. It will help your partner better understand you by knowing this information. And your partner can help show you that the present and the future don't have to be the same as the past. You may be wondering, should I tell my kids about my trauma? The short answer is no, at least not the details. Limited information is best, especially for young children. It's okay to share something like, "Some days I'm sad or worried because of things that happened long ago, but that is not something you can change or is your fault in any way. When I feel this way, I can snuggle with you or listen to my favorite songs. What do you do when you're sad or worried?" As children grow older, into their teen years, they may ask probing questions and wonder why there is stress or distance between some of your extended family members. They may ask, "Why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa?" Or "Why don't you ever visit Uncle so-and-so?" Again, it's important to provide information that will guide them, but not overwhelm them. Sometimes it's helpful to talk about having a rough childhood and what that meant if it helps your teenager better recognize some of the complexities of relationships and avoid some of those same pitfalls, especially around issues with substances and abusive relationships. We want our children to grow up confident, assertive, and have strong, healthy boundaries. We want our children to be able to say no. We want our children to turn to us and trust in others for help when they need it. We want our children to speak their minds and not keep dangerous secrets. We don't want them growing up fearful of anyone they meet being a possible threat. To recap, many parents experience some stress related to their own past trauma at some point in their parenting journey. The triggers to those traumatic experiences come in different ways and at different times. Recognize the triggers of that trauma for yourself. Notice if it affects you and the way that you parent. If you are concerned it is getting in the way of you being the best parent for your child or children, there are many action steps you can take to make it better. There is an excellent resource on this topic called Turning the Tide, Parenting in the Wake of Past Trauma. This resource goes into much greater detail than I can cover in a podcast. It is free. Please check out Turning the Tide, Parenting in the Wake of Trauma. The link is in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in and considering this parenting topic. I hope this information has added to your growing toolbox for parenting your child or children. Please consider exploring other topics in this series. Remember, no one parenting tool can do everything. We need many tools to become the best parents for our children. Your children's future depends on you and the time and effort you invest in them today.